just either slightly different from what they are, or we talk, we see things that are not normal.
You're listening to Strange Familiars. True stories of the paranormal, cryptids, hauntings, the occult, mythology, UFOs, folklore, weird and forgotten history. Please make sure to like and subscribe to Strange Familiars on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or wherever you are listening. Please share the Strange Familiars page and episodes on Facebook and other social media. If you have experienced something strange, or if you know a story you would like us to cover, email strangefamiliarspodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook, facebook.com/strangefamiliars, and of course, strangefamiliars.com.
Welcome to Strange Familiars. Tonight we're going to be talking to Sam. We start out the conversation with some of Sam's stories about Black Diamond Cemetery. Really interesting stories. And then we get into general paranormal talk, and I talk to him about some of my own experiences, and we go back and forth, and the conversation kind of goes sideways into other realms of the paranormal, but I think it's a good conversation. This is episode 48. We're quickly heading towards episode 50. This would normally be a patron show. Every other episode we do for patrons now, or we try to. We're going to go ahead and release this to patrons on Tuesday, and then we're going to make it available to everyone else on Thursday of this week. And the reason we're doing that is partly in celebration of the 50th episode that's coming soon, and partly we wanted to show everyone who isn't patrons what the patrons are getting. They're getting full episodes of Strange Familiars. We don't do just little patron segments. We're doing full episodes for the patrons at least once a month, but we're trying to do 2 a month now. If you like Strange Familiars, if you like what you're hearing, and if you don't want to miss an episode, please consider becoming a patron. Go to patreon.com/strangefamiliars. $3 a month gets you those bonus shows, but you can go in at a higher level if you want. You can get other rewards, like pins and stickers and t-shirts and more. Check it out at patreon.com/strangefamiliars. Episodes 49 and 50 are going to be a 2-part episode. These will also be available to everyone. It's an epic conversation I had with Clint from OK Talk. He's back. We were talking about some synchronicities that happened. We started taking random phone calls, and it's pretty incredible. I'm going to have trouble even editing the conversation down to 2 episodes, I think, because it was just an absolutely epic conversation that took place over 2 nights. I can't wait for everybody to hear it, and I think it's a great celebration of reaching 50 episodes. So those will be dropping in the next weeks. Next month, we'll probably go back to the standard 2 episodes for everyone and 2 episodes for patrons. So if you don't want to miss episodes, please consider becoming a patron. Thanks, of course, to all of our patrons. Without our patrons, there wouldn't be Strange Familiars. We don't take advertising at this time. We don't have any sponsors. The only help we get in making the show is from our patrons. And we really, really value and appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for your help. As you can tell, we've been doing more Strange Familiars, and with your help, we can do even more. So thank you for your help, and we'll continue doing what we do. The Broken Circle is coming. More witnesses are coming. More Flannel Man. More on-site recordings. More of everything we do. And we can do all of that because of our patrons. So once again, thank you. So we're going to talk with Sam tonight. Did you start out as a ghost hunter, or did you become a ghost hunter because you experienced things?
I experienced something paranormal, and so kind of after that I decided to start pursuing the strange and kind of got right away into ghost hunting.
So what did you experience? Because most of your experiences have to do with this graveyard, but was that your first experience, or did you experience something else?
No, I would say the first real experience I had that kind of propelled me forward to begin pursuing ghosts and different things like that was something that happened to me when I worked at Fred Meyer. For those of you not familiar, Fred Meyer, it's a kind of like a Kroger super chain store, kind of like a large Walmart or something. But I was working in the apparel department, and I usually ended up working pretty late there. I would say the latest I stayed was about 2 a.m. On average, I left around 12:30. The issue I had was I worked, it was myself and then about 15 other women who would spend some time chit-chatting near the front desk. So I would go and sit back in the back warehouse after clocking off and just wait for them to be ready to go. And so it was one of those nights when I was sitting back there alone. This warehouse is kind of off in the corner of the store, and there's only 2 double doors that go into it. And they're not like swinging doors, they're actual doors with handles on them. And they are the squeakiest, loudest doors in the entire world. So if anybody opened them, you would hear it, whether you were 10 feet away or 40. Right next to those doors, there's a stairwell going up to the second floor, and that's the only entrance up to the second floor. And I was sitting about 30 feet away from the door, so I was looking right at it. So I could see the door, I could see the staircase, and I was quite alone back there. There's no one else really in the store at that time of night. So I was just sitting on my phone. I don't remember what I was doing. I think I was texting. And all of a sudden, I kind of just stopped, and it just kind of felt weird. And I heard a boot print above my head and coming from the second floor. And it was like a cowboy boot, but without the spur. And it just made a loud clop sound. And I just kind of froze and slowly started looking up. And the boot prints then just started going clop, clop, clop. And just getting louder and louder and louder until after about 13, 15 steps, it just stopped directly above my head, which was pretty terrifying. That's the first time I ever had something that was like, I was very awake. I was very aware of what was going on. And just something came out of nowhere and just ruined my day. So at first, like I said, I was just frozen. I didn't know what to do. I was kind of scared. And then I told myself, all right, be rational. You know, you can see the door, you can see the stairs. No one can get away. You know, run up there and catch the person who obviously did that. I don't know how they would know where I was from the second floor, but I just told myself there was somebody up there. So I sprinted towards the stairs. I ran up the stairs, and the second floor was just where they keep the mannequins and the spare like mannequin parts and different racks and stuff.
Oh, so nothing creepy or anything.
No, nothing weird up there. Thank God they kept it on the second floor, because I never would have hung out in there if it was on the first. But there was no one up there. I mean, I could see straight down the aisle. There was no one. And I told myself, well, maybe they're hiding in the mannequins. Maybe there's somebody there. So I walked down to the other end, made myself do it. And as soon as I hit the other end and was sure there was no one there, that's when I just gave up and just ran out of there. I would have been screaming if I had no dignity. So, yeah, after that, I was a firm believer in the paranormal. What kind of led up to that, too, and I forgot to mention, was that people would talk about a child ghost who kind of lived in the children's department over there. Like, there would be old ladies who worked with us, and they would literally be sitting there mumbling, talking to the ghost.
Wow.
So there was kind of a build-up to that. And I never really thought much of it, believe it or not, until that happened. And then I was kind of done. But that didn't sound like a kid walking. So
we did an episode back around in the early winter, I think, called the Haunted Church. Nothing much happened for us when we were there. We had a couple little strange things happen, but nothing grand and jaw-dropping. But they did have a mannequin in one of the rooms upstairs in the offices, and every time I walked by, I jumped.
No thanks.
I catch this mannequin out of the corner of my eye. It jumped every time. Like, what? Mannequins are always fun to have around when you're trying to figure out if someone's around.
Oh, yeah, no kidding.
So was this an old building, this store?
No, but that was a recently remodeled area of the building. The warehouse was an add-on to the original building. So Recent construction. That's it.
And did you ever have anything else happen there?
No, I didn't, to be honest. Lots of other people claimed things happened, like things hitting them on the side of the head, like something was thrown at them or something, or hearing like kids giggling in the children's department where the clothing were when it was closed, that kind of thing. But I never experienced anything else.
This experience got you interested in paranormal stuff. You started exploring this particular cemetery. Did you want to give them the name of the cemetery, or do you want to keep it on the...
Yeah, it was the Black Diamond Cemetery. It's an old coal mining town that started, I believe it was founded in the 1880s. It shut down, the coal mining shut down like right before World War I, right after World War I, somewhere in there. And then the town was kind of revamped in 1930. So it's an older little coal town.
And did you have activity the first time you visited this cemetery?
Yes, we did. We didn't actually see any ghosts or anything like that, but we did experience kind of some strange sounds happening around us. To be honest, after that event happened to Fred Meyer, I kind of was pretty amped up to start ghost hunting. I had firm proof that something weird definitely existed outside of just day-to-day physics. And, so I hopped on the internet, I got books, I read up on everything I possibly could about ghosts, and I was honestly thinking I was going to walk into a Ghostbusters film and, have spirits flying out of graves and, us running or yelling at them and casting them away, that kind of thing. And it was definitely nothing like that. I first purchased just an EMF meter, and that was it, and we went to the graveyard. So the first time we went, I don't have any audio or anything like that. It was me and two other people, and we spent about 40 minutes in the graveyard around 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock, and not a whole lot had happened. And kind of when we were about to pack things up, we heard a rustling in some of the bushes to the east of us. And we all kind of turned and looked that way. And somebody was like, "Oh, did you hear something?" And somebody else was like, "Yeah, I heard that." And then it happened behind us on the other side of the graveyard. And then it was immediately followed by a sound to the south of us and then the north. And then it kind of just kept bouncing around like that. And it was like something was moving around us. At first, we were thinking maybe it was a wildcat, a cougar or something. But it was just going way too fast and hopping up in two different areas around us for us to think, or to actually think it was a cat. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. And we were all just kind of standing there, very spooked, very afraid, wanting to leave. And then we heard something that sounded like a small animal, maybe a chicken or something, just getting brutally murdered. I mean, it sounded like it was being strangled and then ripped in half. And after that, we just bolted.
Like a kind of screaming sound, or...
Yeah, it was a gargled scream. It definitely wasn't a good sound.
Is this cemetery surrounded by town, or is it a rural cemetery?
Yeah, it's a smaller little town. On the western side and southern side, there's woods. And then towards the front, there's the road. And then on the eastern side, you have about 6 houses behind a fence. And there's shrubbery kind of around the whole entire fence.
And so with that, you decided to go back.
Oh, yeah.
As we do.
I mean,
yes.
Yeah, just to be honest, it was in larger numbers because we were scared. Mm-hmm. So we put together a bigger group. I got about 8 people to go that time. So we were much more confident. I actually recorded that one on audio. I got our audio recorder for the second trip. We were all joking and sounded very, very, I don't know. We just were not intimidated at all. And it started out kind of slow. The second time we went much later because I figured maybe we didn't see ghosts because it wasn't late enough at night. That was just me thinking that as a younger kid. So after getting there, we kind of split up into groups a couple times. At one point, probably an hour into this, 4 of us saw 2 wisp-like lights. They were probably kind of like what you'd imagine an ostrich egg sized. And they came out of the large tree that's kind of in the center of the graveyard. I saw them as green and white. Other people said they saw them as blue, but we all saw the lights for sure. The 4 of us did, and they just kind of started floating about 3 feet higher than they were. And at this point, I was super jazzed. This is exactly what I had been looking for, and so I tried walking forward to get closer to them, and I was just hit with a wave of nausea. I mean, I almost vomited, and I tried pushing past it and walking forward, and I fell to my knees, and I couldn't move, which was very strange. And then they just kind of drifted back to the forest and blinked out. So that was definitely bizarre. After that, it was definitely eerie feeling. We were spooked. Not everybody had seen that specifically, but there was enough of us to have seen it to explain it to everybody else, and they were all kind of freaked out by it. about 30 minutes later, after the energy was just kind of building, I kind of did the TV thing where I just kind of yelled out loud, if there's anything here with us, give us proof or show yourself. And next thing you know, the entire graveyard just lights up in a bright green light. I mean, it was like a slow whoomp, and then it just receded kind of gently. It was neon green, and everybody else who I talked to this last week, they all said it was green too. But what was kind of weird was we had one friend who wasn't standing with us in a large pack. He was off on one side of the graveyard, and he didn't actually see anything in the sky. We all saw it radiate from the sky. He didn't see that. He just saw our bodies light up. So, a little strange.
So it looked like the source of the light was somehow in the sky?
Correct.
Okay.
But it was a clear sky. You could see the stars. You could see the moon. There was no clouds. There was no thunder, lightning, anything like that. So
right. So it's not like there was a point in the sky from which the light emanated, like a spotlight or anything. It just seemed like it came from above.
Yep.
Yeah.
And when I talked to a couple different people, one person said that it looked like it came from right above our heads, about 30 feet up. Another one said it looked like it came from closer to the horizon in the distance. So everybody was really mixed on where it was. I would have said it was at like plane altitude, but everybody was totally different on that. So, and then shortly after that, we were all a little spooked. It was cool to kind of get that confirmation, but we were scared. So we started to filter out of the graveyard, and one of my friends saw something. He saw like a person walking behind some trees near the entrance. So he said, guys, check this out. And he ran forward, and an orb, it was white. And when I talked to him afterwards, he actually said he saw it as rainbow colored, which was kind of bizarre. Came up out of the ground. It flew past him, went between his legs. And at this point, he shouted. And I turned my head and looked, and I saw it go past him and then just go into a grave, just sink into the ground and disappear.
Wow.
And we were very scared at that point. For some reason, that really scared us, and we all left. That was a night. We called it good. Everybody went home, and for the most part, things were normal. It definitely felt like something was, at my house afterwards, but that could have just been nerves from being really scared. But my friend who saw that last orb, he actually had an orb appear in his room that night, and he couldn't sleep for days. And he wouldn't talk about the events that happened to the graveyard for about a week after that. So.
Wow.
Definitely.
Would he describe the orb that appeared to him?
Yeah, he described it. So I actually just talked to him this last week. It was good kind of connecting with him. He said it was kind of bowling ball sized. And he said at first he said it was white. And then he said, no, wait. He said it was white, but there was like rainbow colors shifting across its surface, was how he described it.
So, which is how he described the one in the cemetery as well?
Just the one that got close to him.
Okay.
So that was, yeah. Oh, the one in his room, I apologize. He said that one was about tennis ball sized and green.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
It came into his room, he said, came into the wall, and then left back out the house.
Wow.
So, very strange. It was a good night, And what's nice is when other people see these things. So, you have that validation, which is a huge plus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From there, you had further experiences.
Yeah, we went another time after that. Nothing happened. We brought a couple girlfriends with us. Thought it would be a cool thing to do, and of course, nothing happens then. So you're still just the nerdy, not cool ghost hunter.
Well, isn't that there's a place we talk about on the podcast, Site 7, and because we've had some crazy stuff happen there, people all the time are like, "You got to take me there. You got to take me there," and I can't guarantee anything's going to happen. We can go out there.
Oh yeah.
What you hear on the podcast is me taking the cream of the crop. You know what I mean? That's several visits. Oh
yeah.
In between that, where we get the good stuff, there might be 4 or 5 visits where nothing happens, where you're just sitting around and it's boring. I think people are very disappointed by that idea, by the idea that there's not going to be something there every time. But that's the way it is. You just can't guarantee it.
Yeah. I mean, we don't really understand what's going on, so how can we predict, when it's going to show up or reveal itself? So
exactly. Yeah.
Very peculiar. I mean, I remember one time, it was kind of in between this graveyard time. I got super excited because I was using the internet and just looking up the most haunted places in Washington. And supposedly there was this old abandoned insane asylum in Tacoma, which is a port city that's pretty large. And so we got our girlfriends together, some girls we liked, and we're like, let's go take them to this insane asylum. It'll be great. We'll have some good ghost experiences and we'll bond kind of thing. When we got there, it was just a lot of woods. and it was just kind of peculiar. And so I thought, well, maybe it's in the woods. So I walked him around the woods for like 2 hours, and there was like a trail that went through there, and then we found like a little park and stuff. It was a little weird though, because this whole time, like every 15 minutes, I would hear this kind of screech/whistle sound behind us, right? And I kept telling them, like, oh, this might be ghost activity, trying to get them spooked and energized. And I wasn't sure what it was myself, but I was just telling them that. And this kept going on the whole time. And we ended up exploring like this whole little patch of woods. There was nothing in there. We came out on like a little barn and stuff. And just that sound was really the scariest thing. And it followed us even out of the woods. And at that point, we were kind of like, all right, what the heck is this thing following us? So we heard it again. We went towards the noise because I was starting to think maybe a person was following us. And next thing you know, don't know what kind of bird it was, but a massive bird just jumped off the roof of like a shed and swept at us. And it made the sound that had been following us the whole time through the woods and flew off. So, sometimes you take people to something and it's not haunted at all. And it turns out you took them across the street and the haunted thing was on the other side of the street. And it was embarrassing. Yeah, but no, we went back to the graveyard. The next time we went, something actually happened. It was just 3 of us. We parked at the front of the graveyard, which was a bit more bold to do because technically you're not really supposed to be going around in there at night unless you have a permit. But, we didn't want to get a permit. So parked in the front and we walked into the graveyard and just kind of eyeballed it, like, okay, where are we going to stand at today? What are we going to try to see? And fog started kind of rolling in from the woods, which was a little eerie because that had never happened before. At that point, we were kind of like, well, hey, why don't you go back and touch the fence? Or no, you go touch the fence. And while we were just joking around, the fog was just rolling in at an enormous rate. I mean, in that short conversation, it was probably a third of the way across the graveyard. And we then were pretty scared. But being boys, we dared each other. We made our way to about halfway into the graveyard, just walking towards the forest. The fog was getting really thick by then. And oddly enough, we kind of got like a sulfur smell, which is one of the claims that people have at that graveyard is smelling sulfur. And so we were kind of like, well, that's kind of weird. That's what they say on the internet. And as we were talking, next thing you know, the whole graveyard just lit up again green. Super bright. And we all armed, our arm hairs were just standing up and we just turned and left. For some reason that night was just extra scary. And we were done at that point. The last time we ever had anything happen there was just me and one other person. I actually had this on recording, or I recorded the event on a little recorder. It was kind of terrifying. I re-listened to it this last week, and I didn't realize how scary what had happened was. But we went into the graveyard, and about 10 minutes in, my friend saw somebody walking around the front of the graveyard. So we thought maybe there was other people coming to do ghost hunting or something. We didn't know what was going on. We started approaching the front of the graveyard to see, okay, who is this? Who's here? And then he saw the person further back in the graveyard behind us as we were looking around. And I don't know if he's seeing things, or if he's, just making up, taking shadows and morphing them into people or something. But, I was listening to him and believed him, and I was, kind of starting to think there was somebody with us, or somebody in the graveyard as well. Well, then the noises started happening in the bushes again, as had happened the first time we went. And this time it really scared us because they were really loud. So we kind of went back to the very center of the graveyard, and we're just kind of looking all around us, and we're being really quiet. And next thing you know, somebody comes out of one of the houses on the east side of the graveyard. And it's this little old lady, and she kind of just looked around really quick, and we were kind of ducking. And then she just walks back into her house. And the noises had stopped at that point. So she goes back into her house, shuts the door, and we're standing there kind of like, all right, we almost got caught. Maybe we should leave. Well, then the noises start up again in the bushes. We get super scared again, and he tells me he sees somebody near the front of the graveyard. So then on the western side, towards the front of the graveyard, there's like a 10-foot area that connects to somebody's property, and then all behind that's the wooded area. But somebody walks out of the house with a flashlight, and he's got his dog next to him. The dog's going crazy. And they walk over to a tree on the other side of the fence, and he looks up, and he goes, "What the hell?" And then he slowly kind of like walks backwards, and his dog's quiet at that point, and they just both go back down the property and go into the barn that's down the hill. So that was kind of weird. And then the noises started up again. And he saw the person again near the front. And I saw the person again near the front. I saw somebody pass between the trees. We bolted after that and left. So Very strange. But I had it all in recording, and so it was weird going back and listening to it because you can tell we're terrified. And the noises, you can actually hear a couple times some of the shuffling we heard in the distance. So,
Wow.
which definitely gave me chills hearing that.
Was that the last time you visited?
No, it wasn't, unfortunately. The last time we visited, we went in there, and shortly after the police were called on us. At first, we tried to hide, and then I was like, no, guys, let's go talk to the police. So they were surrounding the graveyard. They pulled to the front, and then they opened the gates, and they drove into the graveyard, and they were doing the circle around it. So I just got up, and I said, hey, we're nerds ghost hunting. I apologize. And he said, yeah, you guys can't do that. And he just said, you got to go. So we left. Well, one of my friends didn't want to get caught because he thought we were going to get in trouble, so he had laid flat in the graveyard, and the police didn't leave. We walked off, and I didn't want to say, hey, I've got a friend hiding, because I didn't want to
Rat him
I don't know
out.
why he
Yeah.
was hiding.
Yeah.
So the police kept circling and circling, and we had to wait for him for like 45 minutes as he crept past the police to get back to us. And after that, we were just kind of done. We had a lot of things happen, and I think now I would go back for sure. But at the time, we were kind of finished after that. When the police kind of show up, it ruins things. So
Yeah. I think people who listen regularly probably know where I'm going to go with this. Let's talk about the commonalities between what you experienced and other paranormal phenomenon.
Yeah.
You've got figures moving around, shadowy figures, I'm assuming. They weren't.
Oh, yeah.
They weren't defined.
I would say they were kind of gray looking.
You've got noises coming from the bushes. You've got someone who comes out and looks up in the trees, looks up at something, and says, "What the hell?" and beats a retreat. Someone whose dog was going crazy. You have a bad smell, and you have orbs going around. I'm not saying this is what it is, but I mean, you get all of this with Bigfoot stuff as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I got a story, and this guy didn't want to come on the podcast, and it was this amazing story, and I forget why exactly he didn't want to come on. There's just sometimes you get people who are like, I don't want to come on for whatever reason.
Oh, yeah.
But he still wanted to tell me a story, so he called up, and he tells me this amazing story of this night that he's going Bigfoot hunting with either a friend or a cousin or relative or something, and they go to this one area where they think they're going to have activity. And the really interesting thing is, he said he put out stale Oreo cookies on. There was a picnic table there, and he put out a line of stale Oreo cookies just to see if something would take them in the night. And they went and they sat in their car all night. And he said, I think they got some noises behind him and stuff, and some, the creepy feelings and so forth. But what they said happened was a orb came out and basically hovered in a tree right in front of them.
Wow.
So they could see this from the car. It just he said he had the feeling like that was keep an eye on them because they could see him through the windshield, this orb or whatever. I forget there's some other pretty incredible things he told me, and I forget. I have the notes somewhere on his story. But the thing that really kind of sent the chill up my spine, he said in the morning he got up and he went to go check the Oreos, and they were still in a line. But something had taken them and eaten the white filling out of each one and put them back in a perfect line. I was like, oh man, but the orb stuff and of course the fact that you're in Washington State and there's woods nearby. I mean, did that ever occur to you that like maybe this is something else, or maybe there's something else going on here beyond ghost activity?
At the time, my kind of like paranormal encyclopedia was pretty limited, and I honestly just thought maybe it's some weird kind of poltergeist activity. Mm-hmm. But as I've kind of grown up and learned more about these things, and especially when I was listening to your show recently, I definitely started thinking, that's really strange that people who have Sasquatch encounters get many similar things to what I experienced. And then combining that with the sounds in the bushes around us, that kind of made me wonder if that's what was going on.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that is it. I'm just saying it's like, to me, that there's so many similarities, we have to note them. We have to at least go, okay, these similar things are happening. The idea of it following someone home is really, really interesting too, because that happens across the paranormal field. I mean, that happens with ghost hunters. That happens. Some of the freakiest Bigfoot accounts I've ever heard are guys that'll give like a wood knock pattern, and then they'll drive 50 miles home and hear it answered. Stuff like that, which just makes me think like this is not like a normal ape. Whatever's going on here, it's not like a mountain gorilla. Like whatever it is, I can't say, but it seems to be so tied in with this poltergeist phenomenon. And like some of the stuff I experienced, Josh Cutchin said to me, he said, if that happened inside a house, that you'd call that a poltergeist. And it stopped me in my tracks, because up until that point I was like, well, this is Bigfoot stuff. I heard knocks, I got a bad smell. Yeah. This kind of thing, felt really afraid, but I never saw anything. I didn't see a thing. And he said, you didn't see a creature. If that happened inside a structure, you would have said that was a poltergeist. And it really got me thinking about that. It's just such an interesting concept, the parallels between all this different stuff.
Oh, yeah. And what's nice is, we live in a time where we all have such access to so many different stories and personal accounts. And I think that's kind of really helping people kind of get a more clear view of, or at least getting more of the pieces to put together what's actually going on.
Yeah, it does seem that at least there's a beginning of some sort of interdisciplinary thought amongst the sort of paranormal crowd. It seemed like before you had your UFO people, your Bigfoot people, and your ghost people, and ne'er did they meet. They were all in their separate little. And now it seems like you're getting at least some people. They're talking, and and comparing notes and saying, hey, this is a lot like what we're experiencing over here, and so forth.
Yeah, I do have, one time I did hear a scream in the woods. It's the same sort of thing where you think back to it now and you go, well, maybe that was exactly what people are talking about, a Sasquatch sighting. I'm not sure what their screams sound like, but what we heard was like a woman screaming at the top of her lungs, like an old style 50s movie scream.
Yeah, and that's reported a ton with Sasquatch stuff. It's
really
women screaming and babies crying, which to me, those are, if you wanted to lure someone out in the woods. And this happened to a friend of mine. He heard a woman screaming. It's in an area called Toad Road here that I spend a lot of time in and investigate. He heard a woman screaming, and he thought a woman was in trouble, and he ran off into the woods. He didn't find anything. Nothing bad happened to him. But the women screaming and babies crying, to me, if you're trying to lure somebody out, because as humans, we want to help other humans. I mean, there are some people who are just like, nope, that's not my business, and they'll move along. But in general, I think the inclination is to try to help, especially babies. Oh, yeah. So that when people say that's like sounds of babies crying coming from the woods, to me that is so creepy, and it's to me it's intended as a lure. It's a trap. Yeah,
it's kind of like ghost lights too. I mean, like I said, those first ones we saw in the graveyard came up in front of us and then went out into the woods. Mm-hmm. And it was the same sort of feeling, like you wanted to chase after it, but why? Why is it wanting you to chase after it? Why do you hear these sounds in the woods? I mean, the time we heard that scream, that was such a scary, scary thing. I was actually, the last time I ever went ghost hunting, there was a rumor that Ted Bundy supposedly had a house out in Issaquah, Hobart area, and some kids supposedly knew where it was. So I got together somebody who knew where it was and one other friend, and we were going to go to this Ted Bundy house, and I had all my ghost hunting stuff with me. This time I actually had like a camera that could, I forget the name now, but the ones that are black and white and you can see in the dark, just a night vision camera. Yeah. So we drive out into the Hobart area, and the watershed forest out here is the eeriest forest in the entire world. No one's allowed to touch it. It's got a canopy so thick that the stars just disappear. There's no humans really allowed out there, so it's a very primal, just eerie feeling kind of place. But there's one road where there's like 5 houses on the road, I think, and it extends quite a ways into the forest, and the houses are split up about half a mile apart. We went into that area, down that road. We went about 4 houses down. I say it took us about 16 minutes. All along the side of you, there's signs, posted on the trees saying no trespassing, no humans allowed. And then you get to a house, and they have their yard, and then all around their yard, the signs are in the woods saying they're not allowed to trespass. And we finally get to this Ted Bundy house, and it was weird because it was in a clearing in the forest. There was like a little grass patch on the left of the road, and then there was a yard on the right, and there was this empty shell of a house that had the bottom floor completely boarded up, and then the second floor was pretty much just 3 large windows that took up the whole wall, and it was just black inside. I was very excited to go ghost hunting here because I actually at the time thought it could have been Ted Bundy's house, and I figured you'd get some really great ghost activity there. When we get there, there's another vehicle sitting there. That was pretty weird because we were pretty much out in the middle of nowhere. To see somebody else was a little scary. But it turns out the kid who drove us there had planned with his friends to also have them come along to see the house. When they all hop out of the vehicles, they've got machetes and shotguns, and they weren't there to ghost hunt. So I figured it would be the wise thing to leave my ghost hunting tools back in the vehicle because, I don't want to get beat up for being a dork. And these kids have guns. So I kind of hopped along with them. We went into the house. The bottom floor was just beer cans. Obviously, kids went out there to hang out or party, whatever. The second floor was pretty much a skeleton. There was no walls. There's just a couple tables. Otherwise, there's no real furniture. But what was weird was you couldn't see outside. Once you were on the second floor, it was just black outside. And you got this weird feeling that someone was just staring at you from out in the woods, but you couldn't see anything out there. And I felt so uncomfortable that I stayed near the stairs just in case something happened so I could run real quick. Well, there was a there's a hole in the ceiling towards where probably was the master bathroom. And up in that hole in the ceiling, there was just an old wooden chair. And it was very eerie looking, and all the kids were daring one of the kids to climb up and sit on it. While they were doing this, in mid-conversation, long story short, it was getting very excited. Everyone was getting very excited and yelling, "You go up there, you go up there." Everybody just stopped talking. I mean, it just went quiet. And I turned my head and I looked towards the windows. Everybody else stopped and looked towards the windows, and that's when the scream happened. It was just a high-pitched, bloody murder scream.
Wow.
And I almost bolted down the stairs, and then it clicked in my head, if I go outside, that's where whatever this is at.
Right.
And so I just felt petrified. Finally, one of the kids with a gun shouted, "We have a gun!" And there was just nothing. And at that point, everybody wrapped up and we left. And everybody just took off. But that was pretty terrifying. And again, something that everybody heard. It was just weird. So.
Yeah. Screams from the woods. It's a thing. And it's also a thing people say, oh, you heard a fox, you heard a coyote, you heard
Oh, yeah, my dad said I heard an owl.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And, sometimes it's true. Sometimes I've heard some pretty terrifying things that ended up just being something, pretty natural.
Yep.
But other times there's some things that I've heard and have on tape that are definitely, whatever they are, they're not a common animal.
Fox.
Yeah. But, then again, who knows? These, apparently, supposedly, these things, whatever they are, can mimic, other things and so forth. You listen for the 800-pound owl amongst the other owls and so forth. And
yeah. Then we got more of an owl bear going on, so.
Yeah. There's no easy answers with any of this. And I guaranteed 100%, if you'd have had that scream on tape, you'd get, 10 different ideas of what it was,
Oh, yeah.
Half the people would say, oh, you got something, and then the other half would tell you, no, it's a wildcat, it's this, it's that.
Yep. I mean, just from what I heard, it sounded like a woman. I mean, like you said, it was a terrified scream, like somebody was in terror and needed help.
Right.
Which is exactly what you were talking about, so.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, I've gotten a number of reports of that, and it's very common in the Bigfoot world. And again, people aren't necessarily seeing creatures when they're hearing these screams, so we're back to what I was talking about before. Is this Bigfoot, or is this something else that we're attributing to Bigfoot? Do you still do ghost hunting?
No, so it seems to be kind of the folly of a lot of ghost hunters where you start having events happening at your own house. I stopped after a particularly spooky event occurred where I was alone in a house. I rented a room from an older lady. She was about 60 years old. She would go to her boyfriend's house every other night. And the reason she wanted a roommate was so that somebody was watching the house on those off days. I was trying to change my light bulb in my bedroom, and I accidentally ripped the whole thing out of the ceiling. I thought you just twisted it off, and apparently that wasn't how it worked. Anyhow, I ended up wrenching it out of the ceiling, and as a younger kid, I was freaking out, thinking the landlord was going to rip me a new one. So I figured I was going to crawl up into the attic space, and I was going to get this fixed, figure out how it worked and get it taken care of. So I went to her bedroom. I knew the access point was in her closet. She told me where it was before, and I went up into the closet after I put on some coveralls, like old shop coveralls.
Yeah.
And I put some gloves on, and I duct taped the seams and stuff so no fiberglass would get onto my skin or whatever. And I had my cell phone with me and a big old flashlight and the mini tool belt I kind of put together of tools I thought I might need. So I crawl up, I start working my way down the crawl space, and next thing you know, my flashlight starts going on, off, on, off, on, off. And I was like, oh, great. Of course, right away. So I hit it a couple times, and it turns right back on. I was like, great. So I keep pushing my way down, and next thing you know, my phone vibrates. And I was like, oh, that's weird. So I kind of I had gloves on, and it was under my coverall, so I couldn't get to it. So I just kept hitting it until it went off. Then I kept crawling, and next thing you know, my flashlight starts blinking again. It's blinking, 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 and I'm like, oh, geez. And then my phone starts vibrating again, and then the light just turns off. And it was completely dark up there, and I was like, what the heck? And so I'm trying to get this light turned back on. It's twisted in. It was working fine. It should be working. And so I said, okay, I'll get my cell phone out and I'll use the light. By the time I got to my cell phone and worked it out and took a glove off, the phone had stopped ringing again. I got to it, and it started ringing again while it was in my hand. And I was like, who the heck is calling me? And I look at the number, and I don't remember what it was, but it was out there. I had never seen that area code before. So I answered the phone, hey, this is Sam. What's going on? And it was just silent. And I was like, hello? And then I heard a little bit of breathing. I was like, what on earth? Turned it off really quick, said, I'm getting out of here. Suddenly my light just turns right back on in my hand. And I crawl back to the thing and I shut it. So it was just weird, the coincidence of my light turning on and off right as the phone called. And then as soon as I hung up the phone, the light just turned right back on. Wow. So it was, after that, I was just done. Too many things like that were happening, not at that intensity, but that was kind of the I'm done point.
Like I was saying, it kind of follows people home a lot, and from different disciplines. Like I said, it's
Yep.
UFO people, ghost people, Bigfoot people. This stuff will follow you home.
Oh yeah,
very, very strange. And of course, the phone call stuff that ties in with the whole UFO thing and all.
Oh
that.
yeah, the more I looked into that, it's kind of like the Men in Black thing, and
right,
and that sort of idea where you get these prank phone calls from supposed Men in Black or whatever it is, and yeah. You just hear breathing.
Before the Mothman Prophecies movie came out, there was an article on John Keel in 14 Times. And I had read that, and that's kind of the first thing that got me interested in it. So I read the Mothman Prophecies after that, and I told my wife, I was like, you got to read this. This is she's a skeptic and all, but she's interested in this stuff.
Yeah.
So you got to read this, and every time somebody in our house would read the book, we would start waking up at, I think it was 4:15 in the morning, whatever it was the same time every morning. We'd wake up, and like both of us would wake up at that time. We'd look at the clock. It got to the point where we just stopped mentioning it because it happened constantly.
Really?
And then we were getting weird phone calls, just like phone calls hanging up. This was early days of the internet. I'm getting emails from nowhere, you know what I mean? Like just like weird emails, not junk emails, like, I'd send an email out to a non-existent address just to mess around. Like I'm just going to test this. I'm going to make up an email address and get back a weird reply.
Wow.
Like just crazy stuff to the point where, like, she would kind of say we would have our friends would come and stay with us for extended periods of time, other musicians and stuff, and it's you kind of like somebody's on tour. If somebody needs a place to stay for a summer, we would trade off and stuff. You stay at my place one summer, I'll stay at yours next or whatever. So we had musician friend guests for an extended period one summer, and they were reading it, and I remember my wife being like, "Don't let them, like, just gonna start going crazy." And as soon as they start reading it, but I don't remember particularly anything happening when they did. But whenever it seemed like whenever my wife and I would read that, weird stuff would start going off, and then I'd start finding these weird synchronicities, and I remember this guy who I never talked to in the neighborhood we used to live in. Never ever talked to him. Never really had reason to talk to him. He walked up to me one day, shook my hand, and said, I'm with Naval Intelligence. And I was like, what? Like,
wow.
Just like, what does this have to do with anything? We've never said a word to each other. He's like, yes, I used to work for Naval Intelligence. I'm like, what the heck are you telling me? I didn't say anything. I just, at the time, I was just kind of like, okay, have a nice day, Naval Intelligence guy. But it was like coming out of nowhere. It's so weird, this stuff. In the intro to the book I'm writing now, I talk about how it can make you crazy, because I think at the point you start trying to figure out whether things are coincidences or synchronicity, you're playing in the toy box of insanity at that point.
Exactly.
And it's just, I don't know. I don't know where to go from there, other than just, for me, I just embrace it. Like, my life's just going to be crazy. Like, that's and I will try to stay sane, and I'll try to be, provide a sane environment for my children, but I'm sort of resigned to craziness in my life, one way or another.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's funny because my fiance, she she's a believer in things as long as she sees it. If
Right.
I see it or anybody else, she doesn't believe it. So we've had a couple weird things happen in this house we're living in, and it's kind of like you were talking about with the synchronicities, where one night I woke up at about 4 a.m. I think it was 3:30, and I just felt weird, like something was staring at me. And it lasted for about 30 minutes to an hour, and then it was gone, and I went right back to sleep. It happened again 2 more days. And on the third day, when I woke up, I was just staring at this vent on the ceiling, and I was sleeping on the second floor. We were having a kid at the time, so she had the bed with the kid, and I was downstairs. I was just staring at this vent, and it felt like whatever was staring at me was coming from this vent. And it was weirding me out, and so I ended up just moving towards the dining room and just sleeping in there because it just felt like something was looking at me. The next morning, I didn't say anything to my fiance. She's talking to me, and she tells me, it was so weird, Sam. I had the most terrifying dream in the entire world. It woke me up, and I said, well, what happened? And she said, well, I had this dream that I was laying in the room upstairs, and there was these 2 little mice that were just staring at me through the vent.
Oh.
And it terrified me. She said so much so that she woke up scared. About the same time in the morning when I was waking up. It was around 3:30. And as she's telling me this, I'm getting goosebumps. I was just like, oh my goodness. And I said, you would not believe what I saw. It's odd how, it seems like once you kind of experience something, things kind of just keep happening off and on.
Yeah.
It's not every day, it's not every week, it's not every month. But every so often, something just kind of goes, hey, don't forget, there's weird things in this world.
Yeah. I was talking to a Bigfoot witness recently, comparing notes, and he said, you won't believe this. He said, but I can get something to happen almost every time I go out. I said, no, I absolutely believe it. I said,
yeah.
I absolutely believe it because enough weird stuff has happened. I don't want to give too much away, but I do talk about it in my new book. I find skulls on, I'm doing a lot of Bigfoot investigations now. So I'm people call me for the podcast, people call me outside of the podcast, and I love doing it. So, I'm passion of mine, so I'm happy to do it. But in the past year, if I've done 24 investigations, and some of it's new stuff, some of it's old stuff, some of it people called me, some of it's old reports I'm checking out on my own. Yeah. But if I've done, going out on 12, I've found at 7 of these places deer skulls, and it's just where it's well, what's up with this? And it started when I felt like I had one left for me. It appeared in the middle of the trail. I really got the impression, and this is just an impression. It's based on nothing more than the impression I got. I got the impression that it was left there for me, and since that time, I've collected skulls, animal skulls, as long as they're clean and not gory, since I was a kid. I started doing it in elementary school, and I've done it ever since. In the past year, I've tripled my collection.
Wow!
And for instance, I went out on one Bigfoot sighting recently. The guy told me where the creatures were standing. I went out and I told him, "Hey, I'm going to go across the way. You tell me where they were," kind of thing. Went over there. I'm raising up my walking stick. Tell me how high they were, etc. Doing the standard stuff. When he's done, I look down at my feet and there's a deer skull, right there, right where he said the creatures were standing. It's just completely bizarre. It's completely bizarre, and I don't know. It gets into this unbelievable realm where it's just craziness. And like I said, this is where it just seems insane. Where you start saying so, are these just coincidence? Is it just coincidence that I'm finding them constantly?
Yeah, there's too many coincidences with too many people to say it's just a coincidence.
Yeah.
It just happens too often. And I don't think it's mass psychosis, and I don't think it's something that all humans are just kind of hardwired wrong. There has to be more to it. And what's funny is early on, and even up until this last year, I was a big disbeliever in Sasquatch. I thought the whole idea was ridiculous and absolutely absurd, and I think that's because I was really still fixated on it being a flesh and blood Sasquatch.
Right.
And I think now, as a lot more people are talking about it, as you start thinking about it more, like you said, it's poltergeist activity in the woods, or people see it looking like a black form that's blacker than black, you start thinking, well, maybe it's something beyond just a flesh and blood Bigfoot. And once I started hearing that kind of stuff, I'm actually a lot more receptive to it. Yeah, and I actually think I might start going out and looking for something like that here again.
As bizarre as that sounds, there's less of a chance of it being an undiscovered gorilla than there is of it being just something that we don't know. And I'm not even saying necessarily it's paranormal. I'm just saying we don't know. It's something we don't understand and we don't know. I can't imagine, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. I hope I'm proven wrong, because it's a hell of a lot easier to talk about a rare gorilla than whatever this else is. But I really can't imagine in this day and age there being a breeding population of North American gorillas that we can't locate.
No.
We don't have any fossil record of. We don't have any like substantial. There's no body. There's no specimen sample at all, other than some really, really convincing footprints. I mean, incredibly convincing footprints. No DNA that anyone will accept, and of course there's a whole thing with that where it's a conspiracy, they don't want you to know, and this and that. Maybe, I don't know, it's just
anything's possible.
Yeah. But to me, it's just, at this point, it's almost more reasonable that it's not a natural animal than to think that it is, and that's a really bizarre stance to take. But that's where it's kind of where I've come at this point. I mean, I do reserve the right to change my mind.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime. But it's interesting too, just how much, stuff like this where somebody will experience one thing and then next thing they become Sasquatch hunters or ghost hunters. And it's kind of like you said with the screams kind of leading you into the woods, or lights leading you into the woods, whatever it is. A lot of this stuff seems to kind of be goading people forward, like pushing you to keep searching, pushing you to ask questions and wonder why. And to be honest, when I was younger at the time, I think that was also kind of why I stopped, was because I felt like I was being kind of goaded into something. And I didn't like that feeling. And I think now, I'd be much more receptive to that as more of just an idea of being inquisitive and maybe something wants to be figured out.
Yeah, I've spoken a number of times about having, and I always say I put quotes around both alien and abduction stuff. When in my college years, I don't think they were aliens, and I don't think I left my bed. Whatever happened was something else. But I was running a tape recorder, sound activated tape recorder. I throw under my bed, and I listened back to it. I'd let it go for a week or something, and after the first week, I listened back to it. And what I heard was so disturbing, I threw the tape away. I could not handle it at the time. Yeah, it was a series of electronic beeps and me crying out no an awful lot.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was so disturbing to me, and I didn't even listen to the whole tape. I'm thinking I listened to maybe 10 minutes of it before I shut down. I said, nope, I cannot deal with this. I would pay good money for that tape right now. I'm so mad at myself for throwing it away, but I could not handle it at the time. There was no part of me at that time that wanted anything to do with that. I threw it away and just stopped recording.
Wow.
That was the end of that. So I get that. There's points in your life where you're not, I don't know if you're not ready for it, or if you're just...
Yeah, you almost have to vault it, You just put it in the vault and you walk away, because you can't take it at the time. So,
yeah. And there could be a number of reasons for that. Like, for me, it was just... Yeah, I don't know if it was just immaturity in a way. Like, I just wasn't... And now I'm older, and I just feel like, well, whatever it is, it didn't kill me. So... Yeah. Maybe I want to, kind of dig in a little more. But at that time, in no way, no how was I ready to face it.
That's incredible, man. I would kill for something like that. That's crazy. My brother and I, when we were growing up, we had the same bedroom our whole lives. We shared a room. We had a bunk bed. We had the strangest thing happen at night where I hadn't gone to sleep yet, and we had this new robot toy called the MyPal 2000, and it was this little clear plastic robot, and it would light up with red, blue, yellow lights, and you could put balls in the arm, and it would shoot the balls out. It didn't move around or anything. It was a stationary thing. Robot technology wasn't exactly really out there at the time. But I was laying there at night, lights were off, and this thing just lights up all of a sudden in the middle of the night. It just turns red. All the red lights illuminated. And I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. What's going to happen next? And I kid you not, I heard it clear as day. It said, "I'm going to kill you."
Whoa.
And I was kind of scared. I put my blankets over my head, and I pushed myself against the wall, and I eventually just fell asleep after hours of being terrified of this thing. And what was crazy, though, is I didn't tell anybody about it, and the next night when we're about to go to bed, my brother says, "Do you mind if we move the toy?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, I don't know if you heard it last night, but that thing turned on, and it said, 'I wanted to kill you.'"
Wow.
And I said, "Okay, yeah, let's get this out of the room and move it." And our parents told us we were crazy. They had just bought it for us, and it was expensive at the time, so they were kind of upset, but we wouldn't play with it or take it out of the closet after that.
Wow.
It was done.
Yeah, I guess not. Wow.
But
yeah,
that's
chilling.
no alien abduction. But
No,
sometimes
no.
weird things like that happen, and that was one of those things that I'd kind of vaulted until my brother and I were talking, and it just kind of came up, and then now you look back at it and you can handle it, but at the time as a kid, you just couldn't handle something like that being real.
Right. Yeah. Oh, jeez. That was. Well, I mean, I had this, and I never connected this to the later alien abduction stuff until I started writing about it. Some of my earliest memories are these dreams. I would wake up and I would hear voices, and I was the youngest of a big family. I was the youngest of 6 kids, so there's 8 people in the house at all times. But I knew what time everybody got up because I would often wake up before everyone else. And my dad, I could hear him. He'd be rattling the newspapers, or my mom would be making breakfast. So I knew when people were up and when they weren't.
Yeah.
And this happened multiple times. This is a recurring dream. I'll put dream in quotes, make of that what you will. But I would wake up and I would hear voices. And I couldn't understand. They were speaking in a language I could not understand. And for some reason, I had decided, and they seemed like they were coming from the room below me, but they were talking loud enough where I could hear they were speaking to each other. And I decided they were 3 witches for whatever reason. I think I had read a book.
Yeah.
There's a book series called Man, Myth, and Magic, which blessed and cursed my young mind all at once. It inspired many nightmares and many great other things. Got me interested in folklore and so forth. So
yeah,
still love that series today. I found it in a used bookstore as an adult and bought the entire encyclopedia set. It's a great series. But we had the little local library. It was probably about, I don't know, like maybe 10 by 20. The whole library. And one of the things I had in there was a series of Man, Myth, and Magic books. So I'd get a different volume out every week. We go to the library, I'd get a different volume out. When I got to the end, I'd start over, the beginning, and read through it. But anyway, I think I'd read about a witch's Sabbath or something in there. And for some reason, I decided that these were 3 witches below me, and they were having a witch's Sabbath. And they couldn't know I was awake. Like, that was the thing. Like, I just laid there terrified and quiet and, shaking my bed and... And I remember one time I had to pee really bad and just holding like, oh God, I can't wet the bed, but just praying somebody else in the house would get up, because actually I never heard that. I would always hear them and then drift back to sleep and then wake up and someone else would be up at that point. So I never.
And
knew.
would the room be lit? Or
yeah, it was morning. This was in. Wow. These always happened in the morning. It was like, at least most of the time. I'm thinking maybe sometime it was. Early morning was probably still dark, but most of the time I remember it happening, and I'm thinking I had this dream like, at least a half dozen times, if not more.
And could you hear 3 different voices, or?
Again, I'm a little kid at this point, I don't know what age they stopped, but I remember being really young, like I must have just started reading, at this point, so 6, maybe the ages 6 through 10, maybe something in that. I mean, I'm just basing that on when I went to that library I'm speaking about. Yeah, and I got the impression, and again, this is, looking back in the memory, I got the impression it was 3 distinct voices. There was 3 of them. But
it's odd how sometimes you kind of get just like an instant mental image of something.
Yeah.
And it's like, for some reason, you stick it to that phenomena immediately. Mm-hmm. I had something similar. This was, again, I'll do the same thing and use air quotes when I say sleeping. I was in my room. I had moved back to my parents' house after moving out for about 2.5, 3 years. And the only people living there were my parents, myself, and my brother. My sister was moved out. And he was in the room next to me at that point. Luckily, we finally weren't sharing bunk beds. I was awake. I felt like I was awake. And I sat up, and there was a pink, purplish light, kind of neon-colored, emanating from my brother's wall. And it was just kind of slowly kind of pouring into the room like a fog would. And I heard a woman's voice, clear as day. She kept just kind of like sing-songy saying the word Seiwanji, and just said it like 3 times. And I just kind of felt sleepier and sleepier, and I fell back in my bed, and I fell asleep.
Right. And there's no way you should be sleepy at that point.
No.
You know what I mean? That should be something like, well, I'm up now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That
very strange.
That was my experience with the so-called alien abduction, where I couldn't stay awake. I got 3 creepy figures standing over me, and I'm falling back asleep multiple times. I'd wake up and fall back asleep. There's no way you should fall back asleep.
And that sleep that you hit, it's like a heavier kind of feeling. At least for me, it's like a weight's being put on your actual soul, and you feel like you're falling through the floor.
Yeah,
it's bizarre.
Yeah, it's not a dreaming sleep; it's a dead sleep. Yeah.
It's like the sleep that happens in your sleep.
Yeah, yeah. It's very strange, and there's number of Sasquatch witnesses talk about rolling over, looking out the window, seeing a creature staring in their window, and just turning over and going back to sleep. There's no way in the world you should do that. You know,
No.
like that. You should be awake at that point. You know, if not screaming, at least shaking and and thinking like, what this doesn't belong here. Mike Clellan, guy who wrote the Messengers, he describes an incident where he woke up, looked out his window, saw, I think, 3 gray aliens walking towards his house, and I don't know if he saw a ship or not, but it's in his book anyway. But basically says, oh, they're here, or whatever, you know, whatever thoughts he had to himself, turns over and goes back to sleep.
Wow.
Why? You know, like, why does that happen? It made no sense. Like, I've never been angrier. The one, like, incredibly scary sort of abduction thing that I can remember. I've never been angrier in my life. It's the angriest I've ever been. Remember, I was so mad, and I just remember like thinking like, you don't get to do this. Like, who are you? I know Whitley Strieber or somebody said that they said back to him, we have every right to do this or something. And I don't know whether I've attributed that to what I experienced, you know, having learned that somebody else, but in my memory, I didn't hear them saying words, but I got the feeling that they were like, just brush me off. Like, of course we have the right to do this, you know, we can, of course we can do this. But again, that's the one thing like I'm really unsure of. Most of that memory, I wasn't into UFOs particularly or aliens at the time. I didn't know it was a thing. The only thing I had was a repulsion whenever I saw the cover of Strieber's book Communion. I didn't want anything to do with it. I hated it. Like just walking through bookstores. Like I hate that. Whatever that is, I hate it. You know, it was some time later that I saw a news story on the alien abduction phenomenon. And I realized at that point, like, it's like a screen memory kind of fell away. Before that, I thought they were 3 doctors standing above me doing this to me. That they had surgical masks on and stuff. When I saw that special, they had either reenactments or I don't know if it was drawings or reenactments. Somehow they had like what witnesses were seeing, and it's like the image just fell away. It just they turned immediately from doctors into those, and I realized like that's what they were. They weren't doctors, and it really freaked me out.
Yeah, you know, it's weird how you get these heavy emotions or heavy feelings tied to the different events, and they're extreme emotions, and they're across the board. Like when I chased after those lights, it was extreme nausea and just paralysis and terror. You know, instantly, versus when I saw that purplish light, it was a calm and it was a peaceful thing. And then, you know, you get other things like in sleep paralysis mode where you see a black figure over you or something, and or, you know, what we were just talking about, and you get that weighted feeling like you fall asleep inside of it. And I know several times where I've had things like that happen. I wouldn't say I'm angry, but I'm extremely defiant. Like I am fighting it to the bitter end and trying to thrash about and scream. And then you fade out.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
I mean, I woke up swinging. I was that angry. And it was like in the morning. You know, the light was on at this point. I literally woke up screaming, lashing out to the point where I tell my kids to this day, wake me up from across the room. Don't shake me. Because I'm afraid I'm going to do it again, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And if, you know, I'd never want to do that. So I always tell them, like, stand at the door and wake me up. Like, you know, call my name till I wake up. Or shake my feet. Don't come up and shake my torso, because I'm afraid I'm going to lash out. Never done it since then, but I just, you know, I would never want to do that. I would never.
Yeah.
I would feel awful.
And they got to make sure not to put a Sasquatch costume on and come wake you up.
Oh my God. I've seen those videos where people wake each other up wearing alien gray masks and stuff. Oh my God. I don't know if I'd have a heart attack or, you know, punch somebody out. Well, when I was real little, this has nothing paranormal whatsoever. There was this jerk of a kid who lived in the neighborhood. The only really redeeming quality of this kid is he was good with folklore. He told me a lot of ghost stories and stuff. He was a few years older. I think he's like 4 or 5 years older than me. I was watching TV, and I'd fallen asleep. Nobody was home. I think, you know, my older brothers were supposed to watch me or something, but they, you know, they all had friends in the neighborhood, so they'd be around but not at the house or something. So this kid sneaks in the house and leans over me, and this kid kind of tormented me my entire life. Like, always teased me, always, you know, always harass me. Just once I got big enough, one time I was driving home once I got my license. It was late at night, and he ran up on me and started flashing his high beams and stuff, and I pulled over, And I told him, like, nah, I was bigger than him. I was like, I'm going to beat you down if you ever do that again, so you need to stop. But at this point, I was younger than him. I was just a little kid. And he's leaning over top of me, flicking my ears, and I woke up and punched him out.
Wow.
I knocked him out. Just complete reflexes. I just happened to hit him in the jaw and totally knocked him out. So that's the other time. But he wasn't wearing a Sasquatch mask, thankfully.
Oh, okay.
I'll edit that out because that has no business being the podcast. But anyway, oh man, it was great talking to you. Great stories.
Yeah.
If I come out to Washington, you take me to this cemetery?
Absolutely.
I would do it.
Easy to get to. We'll get a permit, though.
Can you get permits too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's cool.
Washington has tons of supposed haunted locations, and I chased a lot of them down, and most of them are just non-existent or torn down. But that graveyard, it's on every page, every website. It's a hotbed. So
It sounds really cool. I would definitely like to check it out. It's been, wow. I was there in 2000. I haven't been back since. But I love Portland. I love Seattle.
oh my goodness, I love them both too.
I had people who I went to San Francisco one time to play music at a festival, and everybody here was like, "We'll never see you again. You're not coming back." It was all right. San Francisco's okay. But when I went to Portland and Washington, I literally almost didn't come back. My wife and I remember it was 5 a.m. We had to leave the hotel room to catch the plane back at that point. And we were looking at each other and like, are we going or not? I said, I'll do what you want. If you want to stay, I'll stay. But we need to make the call right now. And it was minutes before we had to leave. And she said, oh, we just bought a house. Let's go. So we had just bought a house in Pennsylvania, so we came back. And I do love Pennsylvania, but I almost stayed in Washington. I really loved it out there.
We've got so much stuff out here. I mean, we've got the Olympic rainforest. We've got that mountain pass. It's just tons of forest. There's just a lot of nature out here, which is great. The problem is a lot of the tech companies moved out this way, and so the cost of living is ridiculous out here. And everybody's getting slowly pushed back further and further. I mean, my parents make decent money, and they're thinking about moving to Boise, Idaho. So, things have to be bad when you want to move to Idaho.
That's the thing, and that's the thing. I kill myself. I toured the country with my band, and I never saw anything. I saw the inside of clubs and the roof of whatever couch, above the ceiling of above whatever couch I slept on. I didn't see anything. So when I was out there, I did zero hiking. And I still love the area. I drove through some wild places, and my time would have been better served to play every other night or every 2 nights and actually see the country. And if I ever tour again, that's what I'm going to do. Well, Sam, thank you so much for telling your stories, and I will talk to you again. Hopefully, if anything else comes up, you'll keep us informed.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate the podcast, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Strange Familiars is a production of Dark Holler Arts. Music, books, art, podcasts, and more. darkhollerarts.com. If you are on Facebook, check out the Strange Familiars Gathering group. Just look up Strange Familiars Gathering. You can join on Facebook, and we share news about the show, kind of behind-the-scenes stuff, what we might be working on. We share news articles, and members of the group share things they're working on, and so forth. That's Strange Familiars Gathering on Facebook. Intro and background music is by Stone Breath. Go to stonebreath.bandcamp.com for more. When you see millions of the mouthless dead across your dreams in pale battalions go, say not soft things other men have said, that you remember, for you need not so. Give them not praise, for deaf how should they know? It is not curses heaped on each pale head. tears. Their blind eyes see not your tears flow. Nor honor, for it is easy to be dead. Say only this, they are dead, then add thereto. Yet many a better one has died before. And scanning of your crowded mass, should you perceive one face that you loved heretofore, it is a spook, none